Hello, I want to talk for a few minutes about releasing users in Fastcall and reassigning licenses. We do have another video on adding new users, but here I want to just talk specifically about what happens when we're releasing a user and how we also can do that directly on the Salesforce user record. So I'm in the application, I'm under user panel, and I can, from the user panel, can click on any of our users. So let's say that Camillo is moved into a different department or is no longer a Salesforce user and we need to release him. There's an option here to release the user, and what this is going to do is this is going to release the license from Salesforce user record. It's going to release the permission set, and it's going to release the call center file. Now, the license can be reassigned to another user, and for reassignment, that's really what we care about, is the license that's reassigned. The permission set is required to use the application, but it really doesn't matter if we're releasing the application. The permission set for the user is what determines that they can see their user settings, and for the admin is what determines what the admins can see, the admin settings. And of course, permission sets also have other important settings for the user, but when we're releasing the user, it doesn't matter. But it is a permission set that determines also whether you're going to see your users here in the user panel. So if you removed the permission set, the user permission set from Camillo directly in the Salesforce user record, we're not going to see Camillo here. And Camillo also won't see any of the settings. But if he still has a license, he would actually still see the application. If we remove if Camillo in this example was no longer a Salesforce user and we removed the license and not the permission set, Camillo would still be seen here with a notification showing that the setup is not complete, but the license could be reassigned. So I want to show in Salesforce on the user record, it doesn't really matter. Well, actually, we can go back into Camillo. So we're talking about Camillo. So here on the user record for Camillo, the user record for all Fastcall users, there is a call center file. The call center file is required. It's part of setup. If Camillo no longer has a license, if he's no longer a Salesforce user, it won't matter that the call center file stays on this record. It wouldn't matter. Permission sets, again, we talked about. If I remove these permission sets for a user who was inactive in Salesforce, it would remove them from seeing them in Fastcall, but otherwise wouldn't matter. And then the license, which is here down at the bottom of the page, can be removed. And once this license is removed, it can be reassigned. So when we're doing this from within the application, we are removing those artifacts in one click, which is great, but what we're also doing is we're looking for any assignments for this user. And using the application, we're not going to release the user until all this is done. So if we are looking to sort of thoroughly and efficiently clean up the removal of the user, Fastcall is going to do that for you. If you just need to quickly get access to the license, you could do that directly on the Salesforce user record. This says that Camillo is still in a couple of groups, and that might be important. You have call routing set up, and Camillo is in one of those groups, and you forgot. Maybe Camillo is the only member of a group who is receiving calls, and you forgot, and you released Camillo and did not assign another user into that group. Calls will fail. So we are blocking in the application the release of a user until the artifacts are cleaned up, because we don't want calls or fail. Groups are optional, though a call can fail if a user is not in the group or behave unexpectedly if you have fewer users in that group. Same thing here for IVR. This is a transfer, so the call could be transferred to Camillo. The user is removed, the call again will fail. You may also see, we don't see this in Camillo's example, you may also see a voicemail, which is really the most common issue. There's a phone assigned to Camillo, that phone has a voicemail. If Camillo is removed as the user, calls to that phone will fail, and if there is a voicemail set up, removed, if the voicemail is removed, calls will fail. So we're not going to let you, through the application, release that user until all those bits are removed. And specifically around user messages, which can actually be a little tricky, the message that is assigned to the user, we're not going to let you delete this message while it's still assigned to the user, because if you delete the message on an active route, calls will fail. So we do this just as a preventive measure that does not let you delete the message. So if this was still assigned to Camillo and I tried to delete it, it's not going to let me. It's not going to let me delete it. So what I actually would have to do, if there was a voicemail set up for Camillo and I needed to delete it, I would actually have to come in and assign the voicemail to another user who's active, then delete the message, which would get rid of it, and then I could go back and I could release that user. So when using the application and releasing users, if there are any files still associated to the user, the Fastcall application is going to ask you to clean all of that up. And again, if you're not worried about that and just sort of quickly need to get access to the license, you can remove the license. Now note, removing the license from the user will also prevent granting support access for that user. But I just want to mention this because we do sometimes get cases with difficulty releasing a user, and again, the reason we do it is to prevent calls from failing, because if an inbound call comes into a phone number and you haven't properly sort of cleaned up voicemails and assignments and routing, calls will fail, and we don't want that. So we've taken some steps in the application to prevent that. If any additional questions, open a case, email us, support@fastcall.com, and hopefully this will help you manage your user licenses.